What's up guys, welcome back to another Photos Code video. In this video we are taking a look into creating and deploying our landing page website, or you may call it a marketing site built entirely with Hygraph and Next.js. Hygraph is a top tier choice for a headless CMS. Hygraph is the first GraphQL native API first headless CMS that offers content federation, and it provides all the capabilities of a headless CMS, which makes it front-end agnostic, with the advantage also being back-end agnostic, and thanks to its unique content federation feature, which means that you can create content in Hygraph and source it from other systems as well, and that's really awesome. On the other hand, Nextjs is a full-stack React framework for building modern, robust applications. So let's take a look at the website that we are building. So this is a particular website that we are building together. Not the best design in the world that you see in the internet, but with this website being made, you will be confident enough to consume data from GraphQL endpoint through Hygraph and consume it inside of our website. So with this website, we will cover GraphQL mutation and GraphQL queries. All of these data that you see here, which is the heading, subheading, the contact us, this particular image, the list of services, the icons of the services, heading, the description of the services, blogs, and one particular blog, the detail of the blog consumed through its slug, and also a contact us form that covers GraphQL mutation. All of these are all dynamic. And down here we have a frequently asked questions and also the main CTA. So let's widget our contact us form and let's submit some data so that we could see inside of our Hygraph dashboard. Let's go ahead and click the submit button, and we can see the form is being submitted successfully. And if we widget the dashboard and go to content, there's something called contact us that's being made, and we can see there is a stages which is still in draft. But if we go ahead and edit this, and we can see the data that's being filled in the form, in the contact us form in the website is here, which is really awesome. So all of these will be covered in this particular video. So guys, in this channel we discuss and learn new skills around the topics of design and development. So if you want to grow your skills and learn new things that are coming up, please subscribe for more videos just like this. Don't forget to smash the like button for me. This really helps me to create more content. Let's get started. So before we begin building this particular landing page, website, marketing page, I've created two specific branch. One is static branch and one is main branch. The static branch contains all the static contents. You can see here all the static contents which doesn't use and doesn't integrate currently with Hygraph. Whereas in other hand, the main branch, which will be integrating Hygraph and consuming the APIs and dynamic data from Hygraph using GraphQL. All of this code and repository will be shared in the description down below. First of all, let's go to our GraphQL dashboard, and inside there, let's widget the dashboard. So if you haven't created the the project yet, then you can start with a blank new project or choose any of these projects that you can see here in the list. We'll start off with adding a blank new project, and let's go ahead and click on add a new project. So for this project name, we will call this Hygraph Nextjs website, and for the description, that would be event website, fictitious event website built with Hygraph and Nextjs. And for the region, I will choose India as it's the nearest location. So let's go ahead and add this project. After adding the project, we can see this particular new project that we have created will be created for us. So this is the dashboard and it shows us the project statistics. First of all, let's visit and see that we have a quick start checklist in the bottom right, and we have already created a project. Now it's time for us to create a schema. Schema basically is a content structure made by creating a functional schema made for at least one model containing one field. Let's go ahead and add a model. So this particular model will be the banner model. So we'll call this banner. Let's go ahead and add this model. And after adding this particular banner, we can go to this particular page and plan out our content for the banner model. So this particular hero section, which is the main banner, is our banner model. So in other words, we can use this particular content, this particular banner section, and plan out our content. So for this particular banner, we could have this particular heading, and we could have a subdescription, we could have this particular image, and a call to action text. So let's go ahead and create these. And for now, I'll just collab this, and also let's start creating our heading. So for heading, we will call it this heading, and heading of the banner, and the validations could be, this could be a mandatory field, and also we have the advanced option here. And for now, we could just go ahead and add this out. So we have created a particular thing that's heading, and we can create a description for it. And validation, this is a mandatory field, and description of the banner is the description. And let's go ahead and add this out. And also we can also add another thing, which is the CTA button. So for this, we can name this particular thing as button text. And for the validation, let's also mark it as required, and let's add this out as well. Now let's go ahead and create another thing, which is probably the asset picker, which will be our banner image. So this would be image, banner image, and also add a validation and make it required, and add this. And we are pretty much ready, and we have set up our schema for our banner section. So let's go to content, and inside of our content, let's add this add the content for our banner image. So I'll grab everything that we have here, which is the heading, subheading, the contact us, CTA text, and this particular image for this particular content, and place it inside here. So for that, let's go ahead and add an entry. And for the heading, we can paste in the same thing that we are looking at this, which I have already created. And for the subdescription and the button text is contact us. And let's also add this particular image. So for that, I'll go ahead and save it in the desktop and upload it inside of Hygraph. After this is done, let's go ahead and save and publish. You can just go ahead and save it, or you can just go ahead and save and publish. So it says that this is still in draft, and you are will be in a publish stage. So we have already created this. So if we visit the playground, and now we can see this particular explorer and my queries here. And you can also add some query variables if needed. And we have the help docs if you are curious about how you can use this particular interface. But for now, the query has already been made for us, which is awesome. Let's go ahead and prettify it and hit the play button. And as you can see, boom, we have the data that's we just created inside of the dashboard, and this is the data that we'll be consuming inside of our website. So let's go ahead and spin off the local server, and I've already created the static content. So let's go ahead and run npm run dev, and let's copy this particular port that's running, and inside here it would be 3001. Okay, so this is the static content that I have created so that we could save time and focus ourselves on fetching GraphQL endpoints through Hygraph inside of this particular website. So now the first thing is we will replace this static content with the dynamic content through Hygraph and everything that's needed. So let's quickly also go through the folder structure that I have created. Nothing much complicated, it's just JavaScript for now, and we have the main file, which is piece.js, which imports all the components, which is the banner, blog, the CTA button, questions, the services. And inside here we're just using this particular thing, and inside of our components we can see this particular banner, which is the static banner that we can see in this particular screen. Now to consume the data from Hygraph inside of our website, there are a couple of ways how we can achieve that. For that, there is a handy document from the Hygraph team, how to fetch data GraphQL endpoints inside of our Nextjs project. There are a couple of ways how we can consume data, which is server-side setup, fetch the good old native fetch API. We can also use Axios, also use Apollo client if needed. But for simplicity and for the majority of users that's using, we'll be using GraphQL request, which is a package which helps us to consume and mutate data from Hygraph. And as you can see here, it's pretty much simple. We can also add authorization header if needed, but we won't be sticking with the authorization header, and we can see we can consume data just like this, which is awesome. So to consume data, we will be installing this particular package, which is GraphQL request. Let's go ahead and install this particular package along with GraphQL. So let's go ahead and stop our server and run npm I GraphQL and GraphQL request. So that's have been installed. So if you visit the package notation, you can see the GraphQL request, and GraphQL is here. So now the next thing is, let's go ahead and create a new folder and call it services. So inside of our services, we will create a new file and call it index.js. So inside of our index.js, we will be using that particular package we just installed, which is GraphQL request, and use it inside here. Before we consume that particular data, I need to also make this publicly available so that we could everyone in this particular world or using the internet can consume our API anywhere. So we can visit API access, and we have this content API, high performance content API, and everything that's needed. And let's go to public content API and yes, initialize with default. So after that's done, you can see you are all set up, and we can consume data publicly, which is publicly available throughout the internet to the whole world. So now let's go ahead and let's create another file, which is constants. Not file, it's a folder. So inside of this particular folder, we can create a new file and call it index.js. So inside of constants index.js, we can copy this particular command, this particular endpoint, which is content API endpoint. And let's go ahead and copy it. And let's create a constant so that we could use that particular constant throughout our application. So let's create a const and call it API endpoint. And we have that particular endpoint that's here. And let's also export so that we could use this inside of our other files. Let's go ahead and save it. After doing that, we can now import that particular thing inside of our services. Let's go ahead and import that particular constant we created, and also import GraphQL client and GQL from GraphQL request. Now we will initialize the new GraphQL client and pass it the GraphQL endpoint and assign it to a constant called GraphQL client. Now inside here, let's go ahead and create a constant and call it banner section. So this particular banner section would be a async function, and this uses this particular fat arrow function, and we can define our query right in here, and which would be GQL, and use backticks, and inside here we will paste the endpoint or the query that we are inside this playground. Let's go ahead and copy this one out, everything, and let's go ahead and paste it in here. And this is the query is named as banners, but we can call it just banner, and it's banners because it's plural. It generates a plural form of it probably. So now after this is done, now let's go ahead and create another constant, and for that we'll call it response, and let's await for GraphQL client dot request and pass down the query in here, and ultimately return our response from here. All right, so now after that's done, we can use this particular constant inside of our other files. So before that, we need to export this particular constant, which is called banner section. Now inside of our particular page, which is this page.js, we can consume that particular endpoint inside of here. So to consume that particular GraphQL endpoint, we could use something like React query, but for our simplicity, we'll just use it within a use effect hook. So for that, let's go ahead and import useState and useEffect inside of this particular file, and also probably let's define our data, which would be in a state variable of data, and we have the state data, which uses the use state hook, and inside of our use effect we could make a function call, and that particular function call would be executed when probably the application mounts. And also let's go ahead and create another constant here and name it get banner data, which would be a synchronous function, and inside here we will add const res await, and we'll await for this particular banner section and invoke it right in here. So here it should be, it's equal to await banner section, and ultimately let's set the data with this particular data, which is the response that's received through this particular endpoint call, and also let's return here. So it returns nothing, it's a void, and here we can use this particular get banner data and invoke it right in here. So this particular data should contain the banner section data. So we can pass that particular data inside of our banner component as data and pass the prop there and use the optional chaining, and we have the thing called banners. As we can see, we have this particular thing called banners inside of here. So if we hit the play button, we should receive this response, but what we need is button text, not created at and not everything else. Probably we also need is the image URL. So let's go to image, and inside the image we could see a URL here. Let's enable that and play the button, and we can see the image URL being fetched as well. Let's go ahead and paste this particular query and paste it right in the GQL query right in there. So let's go to our page and let's go to our banner, which passes the banner's data. As we can see, we are only taking the first array, so that's why we are using the index 0. And we can go to the banner section now. Let's go to components, and inside of our banner we can receive that particular data inside of this particular component. Let's go ahead and destructure it first and call it data, and we can now remove this and replace it with the dynamic data, which is data dot heading, which would be the heading. Let's go ahead and save that and see that in action. Let's also run our server and let's hit a refresh. We don't see the heading, so let's see why. Let's go to inspect and go to console, and we must see that banner section is not defined. So probably there is some mistake that I did. Banner section is not defined. Oh, we generally forgot to import the banner. Let's also import that particular banner inside of our page here. Import banner section from, and we are using it from app services, and inside for services we have this thing called index file. So let's go ahead and save it, and we must see the heading data right in here. And if we go to our response, then we can see that we have the banners, we have the button text, we have the description, we have the heading, and we have the image URL, which is really awesome and dead simple. So now let's go ahead and implement the dynamic part for our subheading, image, and the link text, and the image source URL. Now, after replacing all the static content with the dynamic content or data that we fetched from Hygraph, we have added the src attribute, the URL, and also some of the couple of things here. So if you take a look and go ahead and refresh, then we could see this particular runtime error, which says that it doesn't recognize this particular image source, which is mediagraphassets.com, the host name, and this particular thing. So basically we need to configure this inside of our next.config.js. Let's go ahead and visit our next.config.js, and inside here we can define a property, which is the images, and inside here we have a key value pair with the image graph assets, and go ahead and save it. And if we go ahead and refresh this, all right, so everything looks good except we don't have this particular sub description, but we do have this contact us and this particular image that's being fetched or consumed from Hygraph, which is awesome. And the banner subheading is not here, so probably I named that particular thing as description. So let's go ahead and change this as description. Let's go ahead and save it. Let's go ahead and see that particular thing being reflected inside of our dashboard, which is super awesome. All right, so now the same thing goes to our services. If we visit the previously created page, which is currently not serving, anyway, we have this particular services. For our services, we have image, src, URL, heading, and a subheading. So let's go ahead and model our services data as well. Let's go to schema and add a model. We already have a banner model here, as you can see. We will add another model and call it services. The description could be the list of services, and let's go ahead and add this particular model. So probably this could be service, this could be service, and this could be approval of services, and it would be happy. So now let's go ahead and save it. The service model is created. Now for our service, we can go ahead and add a couple of fields. The first field is a heading, which should be the heading of the services, and use a validation and mark it as required fields. And we have a character count limit and specific regex pattern, which we won't be using for now. Let's go ahead and add this particular heading. Now we also need a couple of multi-line text, which would be description, and let's call it the description of the service, and make this mandatory field. And lastly, we need an image, which should be an asset picker. And let's call this icon, service icon. And this should be a mandatory field. All right, after adding that, our schema is being created. And let's go ahead and feed up some content for our service section. Right now, we don't have any data. So let's create some data for our service section. We have just added a couple of services, which are just 4 services for now. And we can now go to our API playground. And inside here, we can create a new tab. And for that, we will query services. Let's go ahead and query services, but it says the argument cannot be empty. So let's go ahead and play that. Probably this is not the services. So we can query this thing called services. And yeah, this is the services. For our query, we can name our query service or service list, and it changes service list. And we can query heading, subheading, the icon URL probably. So let's go ahead and hit this play button, and we can see our services is being returned in an array. So we can map out our list of services inside of our Nextjs app. So now let's go ahead and visit our particular component, that is services. And inside here, we'll consume that particular data, which is the services. So before consuming that, we can now create another constant and call it service section. And we will paste in the GraphQL query that we just used it inside of our playground, which is this. Let's go ahead and copy it, and let's create another constant. And we probably need to export the constant as well. And so export constant services section, and write const query, and use GQL and make the use of backticks. Inside there, we are pasting that particular query that we just did, and ultimately return the response from our synchronous function call right in here. So this looks fine. Let's go ahead and save it, and let's go ahead and also import this particular service inside of our page.js. And right in here, so we will also create another const, call it service response await our service section. And also probably we need to manage another piece of state. For now, we will just query two different thing, which is banner and services. But after all, at the end of this particular video, the home page will overall be just one query. In other words, all data needed for the home page is just one endpoint, or it's just one GraphQL query. So for now, we can just stick with it. Service data and set service data, and make the use of useState. And use this set service data inside of our service async call here, and also probably use this service data and pass it down to our React component right in here. So this is being passed as a service data. Let's go ahead and save it. And inside of our service, which is this file, let's go ahead and consume that particular data inside of our service. Now we can destructure the data, which is the prop that is passed to this component. And also probably we need to map out the data, because it returns an array of services. So let's go ahead and use a map function, which is also a higher order function inside of this particular service. And I will just go ahead and paste it what I have written before, and let's go ahead and save it. And if we take a look at this particular application, it's probably running. Probably I'm running a previous file. Let's go ahead and run the local server and hit a refresh. Data.map is not a function. Okay, probably we have this particular data.map service. Data, let's go to services. We can see that it has services. It doesn't have something called data. That's why we got that particular error. So we need to add, like, we can also hover this and check this one out. Console Ninja. I'm using this Console Ninja, but it doesn't let me see the services inside here. So let's go ahead and probably replace everything that we have inside of services. Probably it needs data.services, and it says that icon service data.service.map service.icon.url. Let's go to playground and see service.icon.url. That should be correct, but let's use the optional tuning here and see what's going on. All right, so we have our data here, but the icon is not loading. Let's see why. Okay, so inside of our data, we can see icon is null. It's probably because we haven't published the assets. Let's go to assets, and it's still in draft stage. Let's publish everything that we have, and we should see now the icon. Let's go ahead and refresh it. We should now see the icon, and we see the icon, which is great. So this is how we just queried the data needed for our services. Now let's move on to our blog section. So our blog section will have heading, definitely, and a subdescription, CTA text, and this particular image. And inside of that particular detail, we'll also need a slug so that we could visit this particular blog detail page. And it will have a full description, not a thumbnail image. This is a thumbnail image. The full description will have a banner image. So let's plan out the content for our blog section. So we just don't need this. So let's go to schema and add a new schema and call it blog list. Let's add a model. Probably we can just call it blog list, and we can add a model there. So inside of our blog list, we can first, let's go ahead and generate the slug. Before that, let's go ahead and use a heading. That heading will be used as a slug, heading of the blog, and use this as a title field. No, make this field required, yes. And now we can go ahead and use this particular heading and treat this as a slug. Generate the slug from the template, and this is the heading. The main thing is, if the heading hasn't been created, we shouldn't see this, and we won't be seeing this particular thing, which is the heading. And the display name, it could be just heading. Probably this is a slug, so it's the slug, slug of the blog. And we can add this as a auto-generated. So let's go ahead and add this. We'll also add a thumbnail image. Let's go to asset picker, and add and for the description, let's add this is thumbnail image, and validation mark is as required field. Let's go ahead and add it, and let's go ahead and add a description and add a CTA text. So we have heading, slug, thumbnail image, CTA text, and description. Probably we can call it sub description, and let's add a rich text, and this could be full description, which should be all the description for the blog detail, and validation is marked as required field. This was a thumbnail image, probably there's a typo, thumbnail image, so we will add a banner image now, which should be inside of the description. Let's go ahead and add it. So we are pretty much ready for our blog list schema. Let's go ahead to our content, and inside of our blog list, let's go ahead and fill the content for our blog. So for our blog list, I have added 3 blog entries. And if we go to the playground, I have created a new tab which you can create with the plus sign here. And for the blog list, we can query that particular blog list, and you can see all the data that I've filled is being returned to me. So we can use this particular data or this particular query inside of our service file. So let's go to our service index.js, and what we want to do is we created 2 different constant, which is banner section and the service section. So what we want to do is we want to make the use of single query for our entire home page. So in other words, these banner and server lists will be a single query, not just these 2, but all the data that's needed. For example, the banner, the service, the blogs, the CTA, the FAQs will be just one single query. So for that, we'll just go ahead and refactor this to make just one single query endpoint. So what we have made some couple of changes is we have created a single query endpoint or just a single GraphQL query, where we will be querying down the homepage query. Homepage contains banner, blog lists, and the services, and later on we will add other sections as well. And for the blog list, we need a slug, heading, thumbnail, URL, CTA text, and sub description. So slug is basically needed for navigating or achieving dynamic routes and fetching or querying the data for a single blog. So that's why we need a uniquely generated slug. And with this changes, now we can go to our page and just query homepage, importing from the services index we saw before. And inside here, we can await for this response to resolve and ultimately set this particular data and pass the services inside of our services component. And we can fetch or destructure data and use this particular thing, which is service icon, URL, service heading, and service description inside of our components. So this is how it looks currently. So now let's move to our blogs. So our blogs is also probably we have already fetched the data needed for our blogs. So let's go to our blogs, and inside here we can see a single blog card. So first of all, let's go ahead and implement a map function for our blog card and receive the prop that's passed in to this particular component. So the prop that we are passing in is data dot, probably it's a data dot blog, So we will just pass data.bloglist probably. So let's go ahead and change this to data.bloglist, and inside of our blogs we can now use that particular data inside here. So for that, I've already prepared a couple of code snippets, so I'll go ahead and paste it right in here. So yeah, we have now received the prop data, and we are mapping out the blog. We need a key attribute for each of our map elements that's being returned. And also we have the blog card here, which receives heading, sub description, thumbnail, image URL, CTA text, and a slug that we created inside of Hygraph. Now inside of our blog card, now we can destructure these and consume it right inside here. So let's go ahead and destructure everything inside of our blog card. All right, so we have destructure heading, subheading, description, thumbnail, image, CTA text, and slug. And inside of our components, we are using the dynamic props that's being passed to the blog card. And if we take a look at the blogs, then we can see the blog card and the URL is being generated, and you can see it right floating when I hover it, and that is looking awesome. But the thing is, we haven't really created a dynamic route yet. So let's go ahead and create a dynamic route for our blogs. So to create a dynamic route inside of latest Next 14, probably it's 14.0.4 currently. So let's go ahead and create a dynamic route. For that, let's go ahead and add a folder and call it blog. And inside that particular blog, we will create a new folder and call it slug, like this. The slug will be just like an array inside there, because it's a dynamic route. And inside there, we can call this page.js. All right. So inside page.js, what we can do is we can get the single blog. So we haven't really created the service file for fetching a single blog. So that's why let's go ahead and create a service file for fetching a single blog. So if you want to index, place in this file, you can create a page.js inside of blog, but you are visiting a dynamic route. That's why we are creating page.js inside of slug. So let's go ahead and create a service for our fetching a single blog list. So for fetching a single blog list, let's create a constant and call it get single blog, which should be in asynchronous function and which takes in the slug that's uniquely generated through Hygraph. And it would be a GraphQL query, and that would be this particular thing. And if you want to use this particular query, which I have already created before, let's go to this and paste it right in here. And for our slug, let's go ahead and use this particular slug and use it inside of our variable right in here. So that would be slug, and the slug is this particular thing. Now let's go ahead and play that particular button. It says that fields blog is not defined in query. Blogs. Let's change this to blog. Let's see. Field blog is not. Let's change this to probably blog list. It should be a blog list, and it is a blog list. Okay, so let's go ahead and copy this. We are passing slug as a query variables inside of our GraphQL endpoint that we created just now. And if we go ahead and play this button, we can see that we are returned with the data. Now let's replace that particular thing with this and hit on save. And ultimately we are returning the response we receive from this GraphQL query. And let's go ahead and use this particular endpoint inside of our dynamic route. So to fetch the data inside of our dynamic route, I've already prepared a couple of code snippets that I'll be just pasting out. We are using a useState and useEffect to fetch data, and we are importing the service constant imported here, which is exported inside of services. We just created, we get single block, which is imported inside of our dynamic route, which is this particular thing, slug base.js and get single block, and passing out params.slug. So this particular params.slug is basically the params slug that's being visited, and ultimately we are setting this particular thing, and the block detail is being printed out, or it's in the UI like this. All right, so with this change, let's go ahead and hit on save and give it a refresh, and let's visit the first particular blog, which is the biggest React conference, and let's click on find out more. It says like blogs.heading is not defined. Probably we should see the query blog list.heading. Probably it should be blog list.heading. Let's go ahead and change it to blog list.heading. Let's go ahead and hit save. And if we take a look at here, we can see the data is being fetched, and we have all the blog detail that we want inside of our components right in here. If we visit tool spectacular news a party, then we can find it right in here. And if we visit React is the king of library, then it's the details are here. So basically what we did is we used a dangerously set inner HTML to fetch in the description, but you could stick with Markdown and use some Markdown processing libraries, or just use just handy dangerously set inner HTML to make the use of this particular scenario. Okay, so after that's done, our blog list of blog cards is being created. Now let's go ahead and create this particular CTA field. To create our CTA, we will name this particular thing CTA, and probably we haven't created a schema for our CTA. Let's go ahead and create a schema for our CTA. For our CTA, we will call this CTA and add a model. And for the CTA, we need a CTA text, heading, and description. So that's what we need: a heading, a sub-description, and a CTA text. So let's go ahead and create a single line of text, which is heading, and this could be marked as a required field. And we need a CTA text, also mark this as a required field. And ultimately we need a description, so it should be a multi-line text. So let's add a multi-line text of description. And validation, this also is a required field. Now after adding that, we can create a content for our model we just added. Let's go to content, and inside of content we can see CTA but no data found. Let's go ahead and add an entry. For our entry, we can just copy everything that's inside of our static branch, or what we see here, and let's add description, and let's call this contact us. After that's done, let's go ahead and save and publish this. Looks like we have the CTs, and let's query the description first, and this is the CTEs. Okay, so CTA section, let's call this CTA section, and we can query down description and everything we need. All right, so let's update our service file. So inside of our index service, we can add a new query update inside of a homepage query, which is the CTAs. So let's go ahead and add CTAs right in here. Let's hit save. We should see a CTA that's received inside of our data to this, and let's pass down the CTA inside of our CTA component, which is data dot probably CTAs, and we are just having one particular index inside of CTAs, so that's why we are just using that. And inside of CTA, we can consume that particular data inside here. So let's destructure data. Okay, so we have just destructured data and used heading, description, and CTA text. And also we have a route called contact, but we haven't created that. And if we take a look at the site here, we can see that our CTA text has been created, and this is probably the dynamic thing that we are looking at. If we go to content and visit CTA and edit this, contact us please, or just mark the exclamation here, save and publish, save and publish. After that's published, let's go ahead and refresh this, and we can see our exclamation mark there, which means that this is dynamic content fetched right from Hygraph. All right, so let's create another last schema that we need, which is the frequently asked questions. So for frequently asked questions, what we need is we'll call this FAQs, and it just need is a question and answer. So I will add a model, and I will also add a content for it. I've added a couple of questions and answers inside of FAQ content. And if we go ahead and go to playground and go to FAQs and tick mark the questions, and we can see the answers, the questions, and also we can tick mark and query the answer as well. And we can see we can make the use of FAQs, or let's questions. Okay, we'll name this questions, and let's copy that particular query, and inside of our services we'll add another thing, which is FAQs, and also update our page and pass down FAQs inside of our questions. So that would be data.faqs. So let's pass down data FAQs, and inside of our questions, now we can go to questions, and inside of our questions we can destructure the data that's here, and we can map out the data because it's an array of question and answers, and we just print out the question and answer. So if we hit save and take a look at the browser, and we can see that we can have a list of question answers, which is a dynamic data fetched right from Hygraph, which is awesome. Now the last thing is we need to add a contact us page. So if we click on a contact us page, it visits us at this particular page. So let's go ahead and build this particular contact form so that we could mutate the data through here. So for that, let's go ahead and create a content or just a schema. And for our mutation, let's go ahead and add a contact. Create a contact and add a model. So this particular thing or the contact model will have a first name. You can also mark this as a required field if needed. And we can also add a phone number, which should be a float. Probably we could use integers, but float would be fine for now. Let's add a display name of phone, and also add another thing, which is last name. And lastly, we need to add an email address. So that would be email address, single line of text, and for the validation it should be email. All right, so single line flags settings, this could be email, and let's add it. After that's done, let's go to content, and inside of content we can see this particular thing called contact. Let's click on contact, and for our data that's has not found. So this particular model or content that we created can be used from here. So let's go to here, and we can add a new mutation. So before we did just covered query, now let's cover mutation part of GraphQL. So for our mutation, we can mutate the contact with these properties that we created, which is first name, phone, and last name, and all the stuff. So let's go ahead and prettify this so that you could see everything, which is just my name, phone, email, and all the stuff. Let's go ahead and play this button. And it looks like our first name is not defined by type content create input. So let's go to content and contact schema contact first name. So it's using camel case. So let's use this kind of format and go ahead and update it. Now let's go to our GraphQL playground and let's play this. Our first name field. Did you mean first name or last name? First name, last name. So this also could be a small. First name is not defined by type. Okay, I got the problem. Actually, we need to go to our project settings and go to API access, and we want to add an additional permission to read, create, update, delete. Probably create is fine. So all models, probably contacts need to be created. So contact created and updated. So let's go ahead and read, create, and update for our contact. And this should be a solution so that we could read, create, and update that particular contact model. So now it's let's go ahead and play this again. It again says that input field first name is not defined by type. Did you mean first name or last name? Probably let's use everything small case. So let's go to content, contact, our schema, contact, first name, last name, first name. Okay, so this could be just this, and let's go ahead and update it. And let's also check our last name. This is all small case. And if we visit the playground and hit the play button, we can see that the ID is being returned to us, which means that we have successfully created a GraphQL mutation inside of our Hygraph dashboard. If we go to content, and inside of content, we can see contact, and we can see a contact that's being added. If we visit this particular contact, the contact form contains the data we just created. Let's go back and let's go to back to playground. Let's copy this mutation query, and inside of our services index.js, let's create another constant and call this mutation. Now we'll create a constant and call it submit contact form, and that receives a contact contact form values named form values, and so there we have first name, phone, last name, and email. Please note that we have kind of concatenated with the plus sign, also using a template literals kind of backticks. And also for the phone, we haven't really used double quotes here because it's a float. So it's just a number, it's not a string. And ultimately return the ID from here. So let's go ahead and save it and use this contact submit contact form inside of our contact. So inside of here, what we want to do is we want to make the use of that particular form that we created inside of, that particular service that we created, which is the mutation for our contact page. So what we gonna do is we will gonna replace everything that I have created before, which just simply calls handle submit function when we press on the submit, which is this particular submit button, which also takes event as a parameter so that the page won't get refreshed. And up here we are taking that particular event and preventing default and using try and catch so that we could log the error if it's occurred. And we used submit contact form, the function that we created inside of our service index file, which is the GraphQL mutation function. And it's basically using the form values that we created, and ultimately we are dismissing a small piece of state which is submitted and set submitted. If the application is submitted, we are showing a piece of UI which is this for a limited time and for 3000 millisecond, and we are cleaning up the time to avoid any memory leaks here. And ultimately we are setting the form values back to null or empty string. So for each of the input field we have changed like added the on change, which is the handle change, and also added a value of form value dot first name, form value dot last name, form value dot email, and form value dot phone. So that's simple as it is. And also in the handle change we are setting up the form value, spreading out the form value of the previous state, and updating that particular key value up here, which is this particular piece of state, which is form value. All right, so after that's done, let's go ahead and save that, and let's refresh our contact us form. And also inside of our content, let's remove everything that we have inside of contact, and let's submit a fresh new contact from our website. So let's go to contact and let's fill up this form. All right, let's go ahead and submit this. After clicking on the submit button, we should have seen a success message, but we are not seeing the success message. It says that error occurred, a status of 400. Probably it's because let's go to network. Let's again hit submit, and input last name is not defined. Did you mean last name? Okay, and so there's again a camel case problem here, so I will just fix everything, and we will get back to this and click on submit. After clicking on submit, we can see the form is successfully submitted, a greeting message, and in the contact previously there was no data. Now let's visit our contact and refetch the data, and we can see the form values are logged and it's stored inside of Hygraph, which is great, which means that we have successfully created a GraphQL mutation with the help of Hygraph, and the data is being stored inside of our Hygraph dashboard, which is awesome. So this is how we create a dynamic website with Hygraph and Nextjs, and it was really interesting and simple to implement, and especially the GraphQL mutation was really awesome. But what we haven't covered this far is we haven't really covered the use case for form submission failure, and also probably we could implement some libraries for the toast notifications or something like that. But but we could improve this further as well. So this is how we created this particular web. So guys, in this video we learned about how we can query and mutate data using Hygraph, the first GraphQL native API, first headless CMS, which is really awesome and really easy to use. I hope you learned something new from this. If you want to learn more around these topics of design and development, please subscribe for more videos just like this, and don't forget to smash the like button for me. This really helps me to create more content. For the repository code, everything is provided in the description down below. Thanks a lot guys. See you in the next one.